All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Happy New Year. And this is the 2022 Global WorkTech VC Look Back and Look Forward. It's a mouthful. We're going to look at 2022. We're going to look at Q4, and we're going to look ahead into 2023. And I will do the precarious prediction dance and put a few thoughts out there that I feel pretty confident about for 2023 and beyond for this WorkTech space. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your patience. It took a couple minutes to get this started because, of course, the first webinar of the year, Zoom decided to install an update. So I had to wait for that. So thank you for being here. A little bit about WorkTech. We are a market analyst and advisory firm. We work with employers, tech providers, and investors. We're known for tracking all of the growth capital that comes into the space. What we really do is look at all of the trends impacting the market, impacting decisions that HR professionals, talent professionals make. We look at their buying habits. We look at their budgets. We look at their spend. We track all of that and we align it with the investment that's coming into the space. So we put out reports, we do advisory with investors, tech providers, and employers as to what's happening, what they should be paying attention to. And at oneworktech.com, you can learn a lot more about all of that. Okay, another thing that we do, we're about to close our second cohort on the Impact WorkTech Accelerator. And this is like any other accelerator. We've got cohorts of startups that are looking to innovate the next wave of work technology. We have mentors that are operators from the industry, HR and talent professionals that would be represent the buyers. We have investors, both angel and LPs from and directors from funds who are very focused on this space. So it's unique in the sense that we're based on community and driving the next wave specifically of work tech. So we've got our hands in a lot of places. My partner, Gareth Jones in London, helps me drive the accelerator. We have a lot of fun with it. And if anyone is interested in learning more about that from any angle, please just go to impactworktech.com and you'll learn more there. So those are the shameless plugs, and let's dive into what's happening in the space today. Is it a bull market? Is it a bear market? I don't know. WorkTech's kind of unique though, and is behaving differently than the rest of the B2B tech market, certainly than the rest of the market overall. And we'll dig into that and what that means. So how did we shape up for 2022? 2022 was our second biggest year ever. 12.8 billion across 405 deals that we tracked globally. The deals are tracked. We've got an AI tool that is looking across, and now it's just a never-ending list of sources, or ever-increasing list of sources. We also get a lot of announcements, pre-announcement. We get a lot of information from tech providers, and I would encourage you to send that to us via the website or via email, which via LinkedIn, whatever. Get on our radar if you're making moves in the space. So second biggest year ever. First biggest year was 2021, our biggest year ever at about 18 billion. And the closest years prior were 2019 and 2020 at about 5 billion each. So, just to put it in perspective, now we are going to talk about this, what you're seeing here, the shift in Q3 and Q4. And let's talk about Q4 a little bit before we do that. So in Q4, we had about 1.6 billion across 94 deals. So the dollar value, the dollar volume was similar to Q3. The deal volume increased. So, really, from my perspective, given the history in this space, we're doing really well. We're outperforming the rest of B2B tech, and I'll back that up in just a moment. So another chart that I really like to use that puts things in perspective when we're thinking about specifically performance in WorkTech is this one. If we look at Q3 and Q4 of this year, yeah, boy, it's a drop from Q1 and Q2, but that was still our sort of heady, incredible pace at 18 billion flowing into 2022. And when we fell back to really rates that put us on par with 2019 and 2020, which were years like we had never, ever seen before. So that made Q4 the 10th largest quarter ever. But when we start to really think about gaining some perspective on this market and what we're doing, I want to compare us to the bigger market. Now, first thing I want to say is that WorkTech and HR tech, the tech providers in this space, with one or two rare exceptions, we're not big tech and we're not FANG. Now, I know some folks from big tech are on this webinar, and you may have some properties that are in WorkTech. So I understand that exception. But 10 years ago, we were really fighting to say, hey, we matter. And a lot of investors, a lot of folks in tech broadly, were really focused elsewhere. And really what started to happen 3-4 years ago is this space started to get its due. And now what's happening is something very different. We're sustaining while the rest of tech is struggling more than we are. Not that we're not having our fair share of headwinds. But let me take you back to the first half of 2022. I've used this chart before. If you've been on one of these updates, you've heard me talk about it. In H1 of 2022, Scott Galloway, NYU professor, Pivot podcast, works with Kara Swisher on that. He shared some CB Insights data over here, which when he shared it, it went viral broadly. It certainly went viral in our space. And you can see that in Q1, there was a significant drop in VC investment broadly across all of VC investment, right? Q2, even more significant. So, everybody's hair went on fire, including in our space. But I created the same chart just looking at our space. And in Q1 of 2022, we didn't see that same drop. We saw an uptick. And in Q2, we saw things level out or maintain, I would say, still at that heady pace from the year previous. So, at that point, I was one of the only voices saying, I get it. I don't have rose-colored glasses. I'm reading the news. I'm listening to the economists, and we see this. I see the challenge in the market. I saw it then. I see it today, but we're not experiencing it in the same way that the rest of B2B tech is, or that big tech or FANG is. And that's a good thing. Now, let's look at it from another perspective. Really, the message I was delivering, or I've been delivering, is what if 2021 never happened? And I think here's from Q1 2017 to date, unchanged. I took 2021 out of the picture here, or at least the numbers out of the picture. And I think this really puts it in perspective, right? We had the first half was still at this heady pace, this $18 billion to $20 billion pace. And what we've done is really, if you take 2021 out of the picture, we're in the top 6 quarters ever in Q4 and Q3. If you take the first half of 2022 out, we're in the top 5. So it's just to give some perspective, right? Valuations are certainly being impacted. It's taking longer to get deals done. But at the end of the day, we're doing it at a rate that we all thought was incredible just a couple of years ago. So I want to maintain that perspective. It's what the data tells me. And what's really important, there are a lot of folks out there who look at they've jumped on the bandwagon and tracking this. And I want to caution you when you're looking at data that's comparing this month to last month. It's just not the way VC investment, the way I've seen it really play out. It's very spiky, and you're better off looking at, this quarter this year compared to last, this year compared to last year, or even better, going back 6 years or 7 years as we do, and looking for trends and getting some perspective in that way. So WorkTech is unique, and WorkTech continues to chug along, not without its headwinds, not without its issues, but it does chug along. One thing that I didn't mention, if you have any questions as we're going, use the Q&A tab, drop them in there. If I don't remember to pause along the way, I will pause at the end, and we'll have some time to address those questions. I always do that. So I keep saying WorkTech is unique. Why is WorkTech unique? So we address some really big issues, and not that other tech doesn't address big issues, but we're addressing the biggest issues in the moment now, facing businesses and employers globally, and we've been addressing them for a while. There's a mindset that is brought into conversations I have with folks, whether they're investors or folks that are looking at the market with new eyes, looking at our space with new eyes. They haven't been here, haven't been looking at these issues. And that mindset is, well, isn't this just a response to COVID? And as we're coming out of COVID and, all this investment has come in and some new stuff has been adopted, it'll sort of shrink back to where it was a few years ago. And the answer is COVID didn't create any of these issues that we're addressing. COVID was not a creator of anything except disease and death and, really terrible things that happened around the world. When it comes to these tech trends, these workforce trends, COVID did accelerate some things. So the big ones that we're addressing up front are distributed work. Well, the distributed work adoption rate, this is our data, 2019 pre-COVID global study, 3,300 participants, director and above, and 54% of companies were offering some sort of distributed work options at that time. We know that's gone through the roof. We know that there's a big debate about, remote and distributed and hybrid, and that will continue to play out. But this is going to be the norm. Our big headline in our report in 2019 was pre-COVID, distributed work is the future, and it will remain the future. The workforce is shrinking. This was not a COVID thing. We can talk about the Great Reset or the Great Resignation or whatever you wanted to call that anomaly that came up through COVID, talk about people making moves to be in positions where they're earning, their worth, or where they're more valued, and all of that. That's a separate issue. The shrinking workforce has a lot to do with the fact that the ratio of working age individuals to retired dropped by 25%. In the US, that ratio went from 3.5 to 2.6. That means there are only 2.6 working age folks in the workforce now compared to for every retired person. So as the boomers are retiring out, and we've seen these incredible projections for the number of folks retiring out of the workforce, we've seen incredible statistics about lack of workforce participation. However you want to look at this, this is a real issue, and it's not just a US issue. This is an issue global. That 25% metric is shared in all modern countries around the globe, or close to. It varies a little bit by just a percentage point or two. So we have fewer people in the workforce while we're still, trying to grow our businesses and expand into new markets, et cetera. In the US, as of the November jobs report, 10.7 million open jobs. We've got another report coming out at the end of this week. Now, where will that put us? Probably at maintaining full employment in the US, what the unemployment rate equivalent to full employment, or is there such a thing as slightly less full employment? I mean, the numbers leading up to this jobs report don't point to anything striking happening. I'm not an economist. I'll read it just like you will, but I'm not, just based on everything I'm seeing and hearing from the economists, I'm not expecting my jaw to drop in a negative way when that hits. Now, along with all of these issues, so these aren't just the trends that are the macro trends that are impacting the development of the technology that we put into the market, but this is why investors keep coming to the market. This is why budgets continue to increase. This is why adoption is increasing. We'll talk more about all of that as well, but there are other issues driving this. DEI&B, hiring, firing, culture, productivity, wellness, engagement, communications and collaboration, skills, workforce readiness, compliance, leadership, and so on, and so on, and so on. We categorize the market, whether we're looking at adoption or we're looking at investment, with over 50, I think we're at 57 subcategories that we look at on an ongoing basis. And those categories align with everything that's happening in the space. These are really the issues that align with the categories. So here you've got, again, it is this space sort of getting the attention and getting its due, while it's also really taking its place within the overall enterprise tech stack and within the overall B2B tech stack. And what I mean by that is, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, HR tech was off to the side, almost integrating into the rest of the enterprise stack. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, HR tech was one of the first rapidly adopted cloud-based categories, because HR couldn't get support, right, from IT. I was there. We launched a number of big brands in the space at that time. And now things are shifting, and we'll talk about how they're shifting and what is happening. But all of that is resulting in a much bigger market that is appearing or presenting itself, growing for WorkTech. So the market, this is a study that we've just done. Our market will near 1 trillion by 2026, and that is a huge uptick. I can't share all the details here because this report is coming out on January 11th, and I could talk for an hour just about this. And all you need to do to get the report is update your Market Insider email to ensure that you get delivery of the report. There's a URL, there's a QR code. They both go to the same place, depending on whether you're working from your phone or you're going old school on me. But here's the short story as to why this is happening. And we'll dig into a few of these points as we go through the conversation today. WorkTech is being adopted more rapidly in the SMB and the middle market. So we had started to see this in 2012, 2013. But what's happening now is technologies like analytics and benefits technologies and technologies around DE&I and hiring and retention would never have been adopted in, let's say, the top end of the SMB or in the middle market. I take the middle market up to about 5,000 employees. These technologies would never have been adopted before, and now we're seeing it in our adoption studies. Sapient Insights is seeing it. Aptitude Research is seeing it. I think I saw some stuff from Red Thread who's seeing it. You can go to Burson and hear him talk about how he's seeing it. So this is not, this is happening. We're all seeing it. All of our studies are bearing this out. The other thing that's happening that I think we're seeing maybe a little more given our lens than others is that it's also being adopted globally in emerging markets. So not just market segments, but in emerging markets. And we're also seeing tech providers springing up in Latin America, in Africa, in places in Asia Pac that we haven't seen before. So it's a really interesting time. Everything we said in the late 80s, early 90s about the world getting flatter, about talent crossing borders, again, leveraging that distributed and remote work trend, it's all happening. About data being oil, it's all happening, and WorkTech is on the forefront of this. So there you go. You can grab the report on the 11th, and we talk about a lot more than just the market size increasing. So let's get back to 2022 a little bit and drill in. We've gone a little macro there. So where did the money go? You can dig in on the Q4 report. If you're here, I'm assuming you've got access or you've seen the Q4 update. Right now on the website, it's the biggest thing when you look at the header, and you can get a lot of details about specific deals as far as where it went. Let's see if we've got some questions rolling in. Thank you. So payroll was a big story this year. It was driven in large degree by employer of record solutions. So as you're expanding globally and you're entering markets that where you don't have a business entity and you don't have feet on the ground, and you need to be compliant and you need to ensure that you're complying with local, regional, and country level issues, not just tax, but overall compliance, these employer of record solutions allow you to do this. Learning. There's been a lot of talk about, the skills-based organization and learning feeds into that in a big way. Learning is also one of those categories where over the last 6 years, we've seen it turned on its head at least 2 or 3 times, because learning, if you think about frontline workers, all workers, and sort of our expectations for consumer level experience, learning and hiring are 2 of those areas where experience is where the rubber really meets the road. I need employees to take their training. I need them to get their certifications. I need them to engage with these learning platforms. And if I'm not providing it in a way that is equivalent to what they're experiencing outside of work, it's hard for me to drive engagement. And I think the CLO, the Chief Learning Officer, from a tech perspective, is one of the people I have the most compassion for, because they are consistently having to reinvent the way they deliver learning and the way they integrate learning into the flow of work. Marketplace job boards, this sometimes surprises folks because the death of the job board was wildly exaggerated back in the early 2010s. What's happened is job boards have really put on a masterclass for the last decade in specialization and innovation. So now marketplaces are evolving that are combining learning, combining workforce management, along with jobs, along with access to the workforce. This is across all types of talent. So sure, there are still traditional job boards that are more like, classified advertising plays, and those there'll always be a place for that. But a lot of the innovation, a lot of the investment dollars that came into the space last year was in more innovative spaces. And I'm happy to go offline and talk to any of you about who some of those are. And we point to a couple of them in the Q4 report. Gale Healthcare is one of them. Collaboration and communications. You can't have a distributed workforce. You can't have a remote workforce. You can't have a hybrid workforce without good collaboration and communications tools in the flow of work, and impacting productivity in a positive way. Benefits. There's been so much innovation around the benefit space. Think about the wellness trend. Yes, mental wellness, but think about well-being from a total well-being perspective, financial well-being, financial wellness, my physical wellness and well-being, my mental wellness and well-being, my career wellness and well-being from a coaching and mentoring perspective. And a lot of these are being offered as benefits in the mix. Think about my purpose and how as an individual I'm connecting with the organization. A lot of these technologies are being offered as benefits plays, as sort of the extended benefits package, and there's some more interesting things coming there. Core HR and all of the suites you'll see on this list: the talent acquisition suite, ATS, HR suite, and platform. A lot of these systems are surprise people as well, that they continuously show up in the subcategory list. Look, Workday, love them, big vendor, the sort of leading, big player in the market. They've been at it for a long time, like 20 years now. And the market, just as it shifted to Workday, is going to shift again. And there are a lot of interesting platforms, a lot of interesting new technologies coming to the market. And that goes for the recruiting and the HR suite sort of space as well. Compensation, this is where some of the trends in the space are really starting to appear. Compensation as a subcategory has always shown up in the last 7 or 8 years, but this is the first time it's really bubbled up to the top, whatever, 10 or 11 lists that we're showing here. This is driven a lot by pay equity, by the need to have compensation data, not just in the HR stack or in the financial stack, but in managers' hands, in leaders' hands, when they're making decisions that involve compensation. It's getting compensation into the org chart. It's getting compensation data live and updated and competitively analyzed at offer time during the hiring process, et cetera. Staffing is another one that bubbled up that I think everybody should pay close attention to moving forward. And we'll talk about that a little more. The extended workforce trend is real. By that, I mean bringing contract and freelance work and that available talent into the view with full-time hiring. And we're seeing big moves on the technology front that are really shifting the staffing providers and the way they engage with their clients, and shifting their data and the way that it plays with traditional in-house recruiting. We're seeing a lot around total talent changing on the back end with M&A activity around the vendor management solutions. And there are some exciting things happening where things are going to get more fluid between staffing technology, staffing providers, and their counterparts on the employer side. So keep an eye on that space. We certainly will for you. And then workflow automation, just as in every other category in B2B tech, automation is alive and well. And as a category on its own, meaning this is not a chatbot for recruiting or for benefits or core HR. This is pure workflow automation that is purpose-built for all of HR, more of a pure tech play for HR across the whole employee lifecycle. That's how this is categorized. Again, we track across over 50 subcategories. In the report for Q4, I think we hit almost 30, but it's in the report. You'll see it on the site. So it shifts every quarter. It shifts every year. This is what 2022 looked like. In Q4, you'll see, workflow automation doesn't appear on the top categories for the quarter, but for the year it did. So again, back to that perspective comment that I made earlier, I see a lot of folks who frankly have a dog in the hunt that may be a marketing agency, or it may be an ad, like a content, platform that is selling ads and subscriptions, with sort of clickbait, talking about this quarter to last quarter, this month to last month. Step back and really look at it in the context of the year. But here's how the quarter played out. Some things that we didn't talk about on the previous slide: recruitment marketing. We're seeing more advanced concepts in go-to-market to attract talent, to engage talent, to convert talent, happening in recruitment marketing. We're seeing, moving on to integration and API. One of the trends we're going to talk about in WorkTech in a moment, we're seeing solutions that are specifically being delivered as APIs. There is no interface, or there's a minimal interface, or there's an interface and they offer it as an API. This is a cultural shift. HR technology of old never gave up eyeballs on the platform, and anything that's come into the market post 2010 is much more modern and much more committed to doing the right thing for the customer, and not so concerned with, we used to talk about eyeballs and being sticky. That's not the issue in the space anymore. We'll talk about what that means in a little bit. You can see employee experience, which bubbled up, and financial wellness specifically as a category in Q4 bubbled up. But again, this list is probably 2 or 3 times the size, looking at all the categories that we tracked in Q4. Okay, so what did 2021 look like? To give you a comparison, you'll see assessments were big in 2021. Otherwise, you'll see a lot of the same cast of characters. We saw a lot of chatbots and a lot of AI, a lot of automation within applications themselves in 2021, but we didn't see that category really bubble up on its own. So there you have it, 2021, just to show some of the consistency and some of how things have shifted over time. And all of this, these slides will be available on the site. They'll be linked. So if you go hit the report, the link to the webinar will become a link to the recording and to these slides. So you can dig in when you have a little more time. Now, I promised in the marketing of this webinar that we would talk about adoption, and we have 5 points around adoption that are really critical to get your head around in this space. So companies are continuing to grow, and in that report that comes out next week, we did a global study. We've got, it's like 1,100 respondents, VP and above, the media likes to write about big tech. They like to write about media. It's a really big market outside of tech, outside of the startup community, and outside of big tech. And overall, companies are still reporting growth rates, headcount growth next year. They're specifically reporting increases in budgets across all of HR tech. So 2 things are happening that are driving new adoption. Whether you're growing or whether you're slowing, you need new tech. Whether you're in the middle of a transformation or whether you now have the ability to shift, to apply my resources, my VP of HR, my CHRO, my head of talent acquisition, head of talent, head of learning, now has a little more headspace to think about what is the next evolution as we are in more of a slowdown period. This is a time when smart companies look internally and invest internally, and we certainly saw that come out in the results of the report that I talked about, that you'll have access to next week. Budgets are increasing on average at about 40%. This is not just a WorkTech stat. I see percentages that are equivalent coming out of aptitude research, specifically on the recruitment side. I see Sapient Insights also reporting similar budget increases, by category. I would say we're actually, it ranges from 35 to 52% or something like that. I mentioned this earlier. The technology is being adopted not just within companies that were already using it, but smaller companies who need to now compete to find and retain talent in the SMB and middle market are having to adopt not just the technology, but really most importantly, the policies, the procedures, the process in order to find and retain the talent, which impacts everything: how we pay them, what we pay them, how we train them, how we offer them a career path, and then the technology that supports it, right? And we're now seeing another trend happening where WorkTech is really starting to extend across the enterprise. And what I mean by that is the users are not just candidates during the hiring process or employees during the time when they need to interact with their pay stub or PTO or performance management, or those times of the year that have HR specific, or those life events that have HR specific catalysts to bring you into an HR system. We're seeing WorkTech extend across the enterprise, where managers, leaders, employees, whether they know it or not, are interacting with HR data and HR solutions. And I say whether they know it or not, remember that system as an API sort of solution that's increasing in its numbers as we're seeing both investment and products coming to market. Another thing that we're seeing is platform replacements increasing or slated to increase for 2023. So again, if I am taking my foot off the accelerator from a growth perspective, it's a good time to replace a platform. And this is happening across all categories in HR. So I promise adoption. There are my notes on adoption. So the big trend that from me that I've seen last year, that I saw really seen the last couple of years, is WorkTech emerging. WorkTech is not just another name for HR tech. WorkTech is currently emerging as an extension from HR tech and will eventually eat HR tech. So all new HR tech that's entering the market today, including the tech that's being released by incumbent market leaders, is leaning into these 6 core tenets of WorkTech. And every prediction that I make has to do with these 6 core qualifiers of WorkTech. And we get into it in a big way in defining WorkTech and what it is in that report that you'll have access to next week. Number 1, it's in the flow of work, meaning whether it's with an interface via mobile, via API, via data integration. There's a real commitment to have these capabilities in the flow of work. It's not set off in HR. It's core to the flow of work. I just want to move myself out of the way there. It is employee first and experience driven. So these solutions are built not just with a good experience for one constituency, but for all constituencies in the enterprise. So it can be candidates, employees, managers, back office HR. The entire enterprise is considered, and the experience, the employee first experience, is paramount, and experience is a given, right? Think about all of the effort we've put into this. It's now really coming to bear with new technology that's coming to market. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is embedded. If you're putting a WorkTech solution into the market at this time, and diversity, equity, inclusion is not embedded, it's tone deaf. If you're not thinking about things like biases, if you're not considering its impact on culture and diversity and inclusion, you won't get very far in the buying process or the selling process, depending on your how you look at it. WorkTech participates fully in the WorkTech ecosystem. So what I mean by that is, these aren't closed solutions. You're dealing with WorkTech when, as a customer, not only does your provider offer, partners that are defined, who are integrating via API, but they also have an API that's documented and available to you so that you can integrate with anything and everything in the ecosystem. Their APIs, their integration is managed as a product, and it's just as important as the core interface. It's all about the data here in WorkTech. So the data, people data is business data. WorkTech data is data that is fueling not just HR decisions, but strategic business decisions related to M&A activity, the workforce, how, when, and where we're going to hire, how, when, and where we're going to acquire, how, when, and where we're going to put facilities, how, when, and where we're going to implement that distributed, hybrid, or remote workforce policy. And it's built on modern technology that demonstrates the ability to scale. I mentioned earlier that it is not simply a new name for HR tech, and it is more a part of the enterprise tech stack. You can see here where systems of work and systems of collaboration, systems of work are systems that are used by employees for their sort of core work, right? So sales systems they use to develop products, manufacturing systems, point of sale systems, et cetera, systems of collaboration, Teams, Slack, et cetera. Now, below that enterprise tech line is all of WorkTech being defined in new high-level categories: employee experience, WorkTech, talent WorkTech, hiring WorkTech, core WorkTech. And this is where that sort of dotted line things start to bleed over. And this is how fluid WorkTech is to the rest of the enterprise, because WorkTech experience is employee experience, right? Along with the experience in systems of work and systems of collaboration, we're seeing more and more seamless integration into both, sort of bi-directional feeds in both directions, right? Obviously. Okay, let's keep it moving and we'll be right on time. I'm going to shift into predictions, and then I'll get into some of the questions that came in. You might have guessed this one: automation, automation, automation. Everything that can be automated will be automated. So whether I'm in growth mode, whether I'm in a market, in an industry or a segment that's less impacted by the current economic climate, or whether I'm impacted drastically, it means either way, I have fewer resources to apply to HR and talent initiatives, and everything that can be automated will be automated. It doesn't mean that individuals will be replaced, although we will see some of that. However, it does mean that as an HR business partner, as a head of talent, as a recruiter, as an HR specialist, as someone in learning, I will have more automated assistants helping me do my job, right? A lot of hype and buzz around Chat GPT and how it will impact developing content and writing content, and how it will assist individuals in getting their job done. Think of that as an example. Think of internal automation assistance to help me move transactions forward, to help a leader move a transaction forward, an employee move a transaction forward. Transaction just meaning interfacing with the system, something that needs to get done in order to get to the next place in the process, so that you as an HR professional, as a learning or talent professional, can focus on the job that you're really hired to do, and not filling in forms, moving a workflow forward. I can't express this enough. There is a people data explosion going on right now. We've got to start talking about like HR data and people analytics, and then the rest of the enterprise, because the rest of the enterprise is looking to exploit people data everywhere. If I'm managing a call center or managing a shop floor in a factory, I need to know about productivity, pay rates, shift availability, et cetera, things that are coming from HR systems. And this people data, I had a 200-year-old insurance company tell me, we don't see HR data anymore. We see business data, and we take business data from across the enterprise. That's the mindset that is going to shift everything in 2023. And beyond. I talked about the extended workforce earlier. A lot of things are going to happen here, not just that emergence of staffing into the view with HR tech, but also the view to how we engage a workforce that is now almost 50% freelance or contract. And this is not just in large IT projects or manufacturing projects, but marketing and finance and everywhere else. We're seeing contract and temp labor coming through technology for frontline workers. And this is something that it's at a level, at a pace that we haven't ever seen before. So this is impacting everything, and look for more developments there. WorkTech adoption will grow. I've already covered that. We won't beat that horse any longer. WorkTech investment will continue to thrive. We will have our share of headwinds. The economic climate will continue to breed uncertainty, especially with investors who don't understand this space. But we will continue to outperform the broad B2B tech space because of those issues that I laid out for you. And that's why I spent so much time offering them to you today, because you need to understand that, to understand where investment is going to thrive, and what kind of solutions are going to emerge and see future adoption. M&A activity will make room for more innovators, and new market leaders will emerge. These sort of go hand in hand. Now, I'm not saying that startups are going to emerge, or scale-ups that you don't know right now are going to displace Workday or SAP or whoever. But I am saying that, some will, and some will be the vendors that the tech providers that today, that will be emerging into a market leadership position. But this M&A activity, this market consolidation, the founder of Slack, Butterworth, he had a great quote. I use it all the time. You've probably heard me use it if you've been on one of these before. And he said, he doesn't believe in market consolidation. Every time there's an acquisition, while it boosts the market share of the acquiring party, a bunch of startups, dozens of startups rush in to fill that void left in the market. And I've been in this market for about 30 years, and I've seen so much M&A activity, and I've just seen the pace of innovation and companies entering the market, the pace of innovation on infrastructure and core technology that's allowed us to then innovate core work technology and HR technology, continue to drive this forward. There will be new market leaders. There will be folks with 10 to 30%, 40% of the market who didn't have that much share before, but there will continue to be new ground and new markets and new opportunities, even within well-defined categories, for companies to emerge. So that's my riff on that. So that being said, I keep coming back to that report next week. All you have to do to make sure that you get your eyes on it is update your membership info, your market insider info. And if you want to come directly to me, I go advisory clients, WorkTech advisory clients get access to an incredible amount of data, in order, whether you're looking at it from an investment perspective, a product market fit perspective, a product landscape perspective, an M&A perspective, et cetera. We have an incredible database that is really, it's exposed, but most of the valuable stuff is offline. So always happy to hear from you directly via the website, via email. I'm on LinkedIn and everywhere you might expect to find me. I'm going to have to look off to the side to get into Q&A, asking about the most interesting deals last year. I'm a big, what are the most interesting deals from last year? I'm a big fan of new hybrid solutions that are bringing together new categories, right? Or existing categories that weren't together before. So this past quarter, Gale Healthcare was one of them. There's another provider in the Q4 report. Their name escapes me, but they're all about apprenticeships. So these are two companies that take models. Gale Healthcare takes a core staffing model for healthcare, and then merges it with workforce management, shift scheduling, payroll, et cetera. So they give potential employees the ability to be vetted, and to select shifts and go deeper into the process with employers to make themselves available and selected. And they give employers more access to more valuable data than just resumes or CVs and certification data, but the ability to engage and schedule, from the platform. On the other side, working with apprenticeships, given the challenges that we have in talent today, any platform that's bringing education, as this platform does, into the mix, giving professionals, both new grads and students, as well as individuals making a career change, access to an apprenticeship or sort of on-the-job training while they pursue their other learning, is really interesting to me. On the employer side, it allows you to really invest in the development of your talent pool and bring individuals along through programs where you get to see how they work in your environment. You get to see where they really fit, and you get to, sort of bring them along in your way and develop that talent pool. So that's really interesting. I think there are a number. The jury is still out for me on the skills stuff. The skills marketplace, meaning internal, is getting a ton of play in the market. Those are interesting deals to me, but I think the real opportunity there is less about matching and more about analytics and workforce planning. And because I really think we've been skills-based organizations for a long time. We just haven't had the data to feed our learning systems and our career paths. And that's happening now. And I believe that this work tech explosion that's upon us and really emerging right now is going to shift the skills-based conversation. So while there were a lot of deals that play that way, I would say, and I'm just hitting the interesting deal list that I had in the Q4 report, but a company like Beamery, who emerged out of recruitment marketing and is taking that planning and analytics sort of focus, has a real opportunity to stand out, potentially, not a customer, as the market moves forward. I think we'll also see, Pep Talk is another company that, again, not a customer, but a company that I looked at in Q4. Not a huge player, but they've been around for almost a decade. They're expanding into the US now, and they're doing employee experience, but from a team perspective. And they're focused not just on analyzing culture or engagement, but really driving action for the team. And I think that more and more is going to be the focus of what we're seeing in the future here, because again, the workforce, the future will be distributed. It was already going to be distributed, and that's not going to change. I have time for one more question. This is always a good one. What about the IPO market? They're asking about a specific vendor in the talent acquisition space that I won't name. I don't want to go there. Obviously, anybody who was planning on an IPO in the last 12 months went on hold. And we're going to see more of that. I don't think we're going to see any exciting new IPOs, anytime real soon. When you look at the caution in the market, that's everybody's cautious, including companies who might have good financial performance, but are expecting to go public. They want the market to be a little more supportive of their coming out party. What I will tell you, though, is I'm aware of several players who are planning on going public. They are planning on an IPO, and they are in that sort of, observing the market and looking at timing and deciding when that timing is right. So when it starts to happen, we're going to see a flurry of it. I don't think we're going to see it. Best case would be the second half of 23. We might, who knows? I'm not an economist. I'm not a financial advisor, but that's my take on that. That said, thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for all of this time. Feel free to reach out in any way, shape, or form. Please make sure you have access to that report next week. It'll be kind of hard to hide from it, but I'm excited about it. It was a long time coming, and we're moving through each category in WorkTech and talking about where this is headed through this year. So thanks again. Happy New Year. I wish the best to all of you. And again, thanks for being here.